The bombardment stopped the way arguments sometimes do. Suddenly, without resolution, leaving only a ringing silence and the uncomfortable awareness that something important had just been broken. Corporal Adrian Vale lay flat against the fractured hull of a downed carrier and waited for his combat implant to confirm what his ears already suspected. "Orbital fire has ceased," the implant chimed in a voice so cheerful it bordered on insulting. "Congratulations on your continued survival. Put it on my resume," Vale muttered. Around him, the battlefield exhaled heat and static. Human dropships roared somewhere behind the smoke curtain, their engines carving angry lines through the sky. His squad fanned out in disciplined arcs, rifles raised, boots crunching over debris that had once been expensive military equipment and, more regrettably, living beings. "Standard sweep," Sergeant Imani ordered over comms. "Human survivors only, tag and move. Human survivors only." Vale rose and stepped forward, pulse steady in that artificial way the implant preferred. The Oranthari had attacked 3 cycles ago, their sleek vessels sliding out of folded space like knives from sleeves. The counterstrike had been brutal, efficient, patriotic. He tried not to think about how those words rarely improved anything for the people on the receiving end. His visor highlighted heat signatures in muted amber. Most were fading. One flickered stubbornly near a slab of collapsed plating. He almost ignored it. He told himself he almost ignored it. The plating had pinned someone beneath it. Not human. The armor was wrong, organic curves instead of hard angles, shimmering faintly even through ash. He crouched and engaged his exosleeve servos, lifting the metal just enough to see her face. She looked human. That was the first disorienting thing. The second was her ears. Long, elegant, tapering backward along her skull, delicate and impossibly smooth, dusted with gray. They twitched once faintly as if reacting to a sound beyond his range. Her eyes snapped open, violet, lucid, assessing. His visor's threat assessment flickered red, then uncertain yellow. The implant attempted translation and produced, "You are standing on my arm." Vale glanced down. He was, "Sorry," he said automatically, stepping back. "Occupational hazard." Her lower body did not move. She tried again, jaw tightening, but nothing below her waist responded. The realization passed across her features in a controlled wave, shock contained, dignity reassembled. "Sergeant," Vale began over comms, then stopped. "Report," Imani said. He looked at the alien woman, at the way her elongated ears trembled with minute vibrations, at the way her breathing hitched and then steadied as she studied him like a puzzle she had not intended to solve today. "Negative on survivors in my sector," he heard himself say. There was a pause. Copy, move. The channel clicked silent. He stared at her. "This is a terrible decision," she said, the translator smoothing her voice into something low and melodic. "For both of us." "Story of my life," Vale replied. He shifted the plating fully aside and scanned her spine. The readout bloomed with neural disruption warnings. Paralysis. Severe. Behind him, engines thundered closer. "You should leave," she said. "Your people will return." "They're very punctual about these things," he agreed. He did not leave. Instead, he slid his rifle across his back and crouched again. "Can you feel this?" He touched her shoulder lightly. "Yes." He pressed lower along her side. "Yes." Lower still, a beat. "No." She closed her eyes briefly, as if filing the information away for later irritation. "Great," Vale said softly. "Fantastic. Love that for us." He hesitated only a fraction longer before slipping one arm beneath her shoulders and another beneath her knees. She was lighter than expected, armor whispering against his gauntlets. Her ears brushed his collar, cool against overheated skin. "Put me down," she demanded, though without much force. "Can't," he said. "I'm committing treason. That is not a recognized medical procedure." "It's experimental." He rose, adjusting her weight carefully, her head tilted toward his chest, ears angling as if listening to the rhythm beneath his armor. "Your heart rate is elevated," she observed. "You're very observant for someone in my arms." "I possess functional sensory arrays." "Good to know." A dropship screamed overhead. Searchlights began to rake the field. Vale sprinted toward the skeletal remains of a survey skimmer half buried near the ridge. His implant protested the strain. He ignored it. The alien woman remained unnervingly calm, gaze fixed on his face rather than the chaos around them. "Why?" she asked quietly. He could have given a dozen answers. None felt accurate. "Because leaving you here would make me the kind of person I'm trying not to be," he said. "That is illogical," she replied. Absolutely. They reached the skimmer. He kicked the hatch release, it groaned open with offended reluctance. Inside, ancient circuitry flickered to life, projecting a holographic greeting. Welcome, valued researcher. Today's forecast: moderate radiation with a chance of existential dread. Perfect, Vale said, ducking inside. He laid her gently on the cracked pilot seat and sealed the hatch just as searchlights swept past. The interior hummed, systems waking from decades of neglect. She watched him as he scrambled to reroute power from non-essential modules, which included a surprisingly enthusiastic rock classification database. You risk execution, she said. Probably, he admitted. But I've always wanted to disappoint command in a meaningful way. Her lips curved, just barely. It transformed her face, made her look less like an enemy schematic and more like someone who might argue about trivial things in quieter times. You are either brave, she said, or profoundly foolish. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Outside, boots thundered past. Inside the dim glow of resurrected consoles, a human soldier and a paralyzed alien regarded one another in fragile silence, the war still raging beyond thin metal walls. Very well, she said at last. If we are to survive your poor decisions, you will require guidance. Vale slumped into the co-pilot's chair and exhaled shakily. Fantastic. I was hoping for a co-pilot, preferably one who can't kick me. My legs are non-functional, she replied evenly. Right, silver lining. For a moment, despite the war, despite the orders he had shattered like brittle glass, he allowed himself a small, incredulous smile. He had disobeyed command, abducted an enemy combatant, and taken refuge in a fossilized research vehicle with an alien whose ears twitched every time his heart skipped. And somehow, it felt like the first honest thing he had done all day. The survey skimmer did not so much fly as reconsider its relationship with gravity. Vale coaxed it above the battlefield in uneven surges, the engine coughing in tones that suggested deep personal resentment. Please tell me that sound is normal, he said. It is not, the alien woman replied calmly. However, it is consistent. Great consistency is comforting. He kept the skimmer low, skimming along broken terrain while human and Orenthari signals tangled overhead like angry constellations. His implant pinged repeatedly with missed commands from Sergeant Imani. He muted them with a flick of thought and tried not to imagine the court-martial paperwork assembling itself in real time. Behind him, she lay secured against the bulkhead with emergency straps. She had insisted on sitting upright. My name is Lyran Kale, she said after a long silence. You continue to carry me. This suggests introductions are appropriate. Adrian Vale, he replied. Human, occasional rule breaker. I have observed. Her elongated ears angled toward the instrument panel, twitching faintly as the engine vibrated. Your vessel is broadcasting a malfunction signature on 3 bands. It's vintage, he said, very retro. It is screaming for maintenance. Same, he guided the skimmer toward a canyon ridge and cut the primary thrusters. They dropped the last meter with a thud that rattled the cockpit. Elegant, Lyran noted. I prefer dramatic. He sealed external systems and engaged passive camouflage, an aging module that projected a grainy distortion field. The console flickered and displayed a cheerful message. Camouflage success rate, 63%. Have a nice day. 63? Vale muttered. That's barely passing. Lyran watched the readout. On my world, that would be considered a failure. Your world sounds exhausting. He turned to her, kneeling so their eyes were level. Up close, her resemblance to a human was uncanny, until her ears shifted, responding to something beyond his perception. They angled toward him now. You assessed my spine, she said. Your technology is insufficient. Yeah, I got that part. Any suggestions? There is a regenerative lattice within Orenthari command carriers. It can restore disrupted neural pathways. Vale blinked. Fantastic. I'll just pop over to enemy headquarters and ask nicely. Her gaze did not waver. You will not be able to carry me indefinitely. Wasn't planning on adding it to my workout routine. Silence stretched between them, not hostile but calculating. Outside, distant detonations rolled like muted thunder. You lied to your superior officer, she said, among other things. Why? He leaned back against the console. Because I've seen enough bodies to last several lifetimes. Yours didn't look like it deserved to be one of them. That is not a strategic answer. Nope. Her lips pressed together, then eased. Your species is reputed to be violently pragmatic. Propaganda oversells us. A warning tone pulsed through the cabin. Long-range scans picked up movement along the canyon rim. Vale killed even the secondary systems, plunging them into dim emergency light. "Human patrol," he whispered. Lyron's ears lifted sharply. "No, Orenthari." "You can tell." "Yes, how? I am not explaining my ears to you again." He grinned despite himself. Worth a shot. Footsteps echoed above the canyon. Vale's hand hovered near his sidearm. If either side found them, explanations would be short and terminal. Lyron's breathing remained steady. "If discovered, you must claim I coerced you." "I don't think they'll buy that. You appear highly coercible." "Rude." A scanning beam swept across the canyon wall. The skimmer's camouflage shimmered uncertainly. The console flashed. "Success rate now 58%. "Why is it dropping?" he hissed. "The system is degrading." "I gathered that." The beam paused. Vale held his breath. Lyron's ears tilted upward, trembling faintly. After a long moment, the beam moved on. Footsteps receded. Vale sagged against the pilot's seat. "I hate war," he muttered. Lyron regarded him thoughtfully. "So do I." The admission lingered between them. "You are a soldier," he said. "Yes." "Then why?" "Because my people required defense. Because your fleets advanced into contested corridors. Because history is a chain of retaliations no one remembers starting." "Fair," he said softly. She studied him in turn. "You are not like the humans described in our briefings. Let me guess, savage, bloodthirsty, poor table manners. Emotionally erratic. That one's fair." A faint smile touched her mouth again, brief but real. "My designation," she continued, "is not merely soldier. I am a synaptic conduit." "That sounds important and expensive." "It is both." He straightened. "What does it mean?" "I am genetically structured to interface with a construct your species calls the harmonic gate." He stared at her. "The thing both fleets are tearing space apart to control." "Yes, and you're compatible." "I am the key." The words settled heavily in the dim cabin. "So let me summarize," Vale said slowly. "I disobeyed orders, rescued an enemy combatant, and accidentally abducted the most strategically valuable individual in the sector." "That is an accurate assessment." He rubbed his face with both hands. "My performance review is going to be brutal." "You continue to respond with humor," she observed. "It's that or screaming." "That would be inefficient." A distant explosion flared against the canyon sky. Vale looked at her again, really looked, at the composure layered over vulnerability, at the long ears that shifted whenever he spoke, as if calibrating him. "Did they leave you intentionally?" he asked quietly. A pause. "Yes." "Your own people." "There are factions who fear what the gate could become." "And what could it become?" "A weapon that seals entire civilizations behind collapsed corridors." Her voice remained steady, but her ears lowered slightly. "Or a bridge." He considered that. "Which do you want?" he asked. She met his gaze without hesitation. "A bridge." Another silence, deeper this time. Vale pushed himself to his feet and began rerouting the skimmer's navigation system. "All right," he said. "All right." She echoed, "We're not going back, not to my command, not to yours." Her ears angled forward. "We're going to find this gate," he continued, "and we're going to make sure it doesn't become the galaxy's worst idea." "You presume I will assist you?" "You said you wanted a bridge." She studied him for a long moment, as though measuring something intangible. "You are either extraordinarily courageous," she said at last, "or catastrophically naive." Still not mutually exclusive. Outside, fleets maneuvered, unaware that deep within a canyon, in a failing survey skimmer with a 60% invisibility problem, the trajectory of their war had just shifted. Lyron inclined her head slightly. "Very well, Adrian Vale," she said. "Let us commit treason properly." He allowed himself a tight smile as he powered the engines back to life. "Finally," he said, "a plan." The harmonic gate did not appear on sensors so much as it insisted on being acknowledged. Vale's console, flooded with harmonics his outdated skimmer had no vocabulary for. "I think we've arrived," he said. "You are correct," Lyron replied. They had not slept much in the cycles since the canyon. Vale had traded favors with a neutral mining syndicate for black market regenerative nanites. Payment had included 3 seasons of a human comedy about dysfunctional astronauts. The syndicate leader had demanded episode commentary. Lyron's spinal pathways now carried signal again, not perfectly, not without effort. But when she flexed her fingers against the console, the movement was her own. "You are certain you can stand?" Vale asked. I have been practicing while you were asleep, she said. I wasn't asleep, I was strategically unconscious. She pushed herself upright from the support frame. Her legs trembled, then locked. Her elongated ears lifted slowly, aligning toward the impossible resonance ahead. I will not fall, she said. I'll be right here if you do, he replied, purely for balance-related reasons. Human and Oranthari fleets had converged around the gate, weapons primed, comm channels thick with accusation. Vale's implant buzzed non-stop with priority summons from Sergeant Imani and 3 levels of command above her. He opened a channel instead. Attention all very heavily armed individuals, he began. Please refrain from shooting the ancient cosmic device for at least 5 minutes. The response was immediate and furious. Corporal Vale, Imani's voice cut through, stand down and surrender the asset. Lyran glanced at him. Asset. Sorry, he murmured. An Oranthari admiral's voice followed, cold and sharp. Lyran Kale, you will disengage from the human and return to Continuum custody. Lyran stepped forward, unassisted. Vale saw the moment both fleets registered it, her presence, her identity. The chatter faltered. I will engage the gate, she said, her voice carrying across both channels. Neither of you will fire. You do not command us, the admiral snapped. No, she agreed calmly, but I am the only one who can do this. Vale guided the skimmer into the gate's inner corridor. Systems overloaded and then surrendered, handing control to something older and far more patient. Light rippled through the cabin in silent waves. His implant dimmed, overwhelmed. Lyran placed her hand against the interface node. Her ears trembled, then stilled as if locking onto a precise frequency. I can feel it, she whispered. Is that good? Vale asked. It is lonely. He swallowed, story of the galaxy. Energy arced around them. The fleets began target acquisition again, panic rising. If either side fires, Vale muttered into open comms, you risk destabilizing the entire corridor network. That means no trade routes, no supply lines, and a lot of very angry civilians who enjoy food. A pause. That is speculation, the human admiral said. It is not, Lyran answered, her voice now threaded with harmonic undertones. The gate can collapse your pathways, or it can weave them together. Vale looked at her. Weave. Yes. Across the interface, star maps unfolded. Corridors branching, intersecting, isolating. She guided them with subtle movements, each gesture precise. Vale watched as hostile vectors dissolved into shared junctions. What are you doing? Imani demanded. Making it inconvenient to keep fighting, Vale said. Lyran's breathing grew heavier. If I collapse your access to each other, the war ends in silence and suspicion. If I bind your networks, you will depend on shared nodes, trade, communication. You will see each other too often to pretend you are myths. That sounds messy, Vale said. It will be, she replied. A tremor passed through the gate. The fleets hesitated, caught between instinct and uncertainty. Lyran Kale, the Oranthari admiral said, softer now. You were designed to secure our dominance. I was designed to interface, she corrected. What I choose to secure is my decision. Vale felt something shift inside him as he watched her. Days ago, he would have waited for orders, followed procedure, trusted the chain of command to define right and wrong. Now he stood inside a relic older than both their civilizations, betting everything on a woman he had been told to hate. Do it, he said quietly. She closed her eyes. The gate responded. Corridors folded, rethreaded, locked into shared architecture. Human supply routes now required Oranthari junctions to function efficiently. Oranthari trade lanes depended on human relays. The geometry of war unraveled into reluctant partnership. Weapon systems across both fleets flickered, recalibrating as targeting solutions failed to resolve. Silence spread, not from destruction but from recalculation. Lyran sagged. Vale caught her before she could fall. I said I would not, she murmured. You technically didn't, he said. I assisted, team effort. Across comms, voices argued, less certain now, less absolute. Sergeant Imani's tone shifted. Corporal, what exactly have you done? Vale exhaled slowly. I think we just made it very hard to keep pretending this is simple. There was no triumphant cheer, no immediate treaty, but neither side fired, minutes stretched. Then the first direct channel opened, clear, undistorted, between human and Oranthari leadership through the gate's new harmonic link. Lyran straightened in his arms, standing on her own again. It is done, she said. He studied her steady now, ears lifted not in alarm but in alert curiosity. You could go back, he said. They'll want you. They will want what I represent, she corrected. That is different. And what do you want? She looked at him, truly looked as she had on the battlefield. A future where we do not leave each other in the dust, she said. He huffed a quiet laugh. Ambitious. Your species specializes in improbable endeavors. Fair. Fleet formations loosened. Target locks disengaged. The war did not end with a single declaration, but its momentum cracked. Vale's implant chimed with an incoming disciplinary notice, then paused as command flagged his status for strategic review. Am I still under arrest? He asked into comms. Imani hesitated. We're reassessing. Take your time, he said. Lyran took a tentative step forward, unaided, toward the viewport. The restructured corridors shimmered beyond, pathways no longer aimed like spears but braided like threads. You have changed, she said quietly. Yeah, he admitted. I used to think duty was just following orders. And now? Now I think it's choosing what kind of person you are when orders fail. Her ears angled toward him, steady and warm. Then perhaps, she said, your species is not as emotionally erratic as advertised. Don't spread that around, he replied. We have a reputation. Together they stood within the gate's quiet hum, while two civilizations began the slow, awkward process of talking instead of shooting. The war had not vanished. Hatred did not evaporate, but a bridge held where a weapon might have been. And for the first time since the bombardment, the silence felt less like aftermath and more like possibility.